Darkness had long swallowed the streets of New York City, its inky veil smothering every corner as an icy wind sliced relentlessly through the narrow alleys. Dim streetlights flickered feebly, struggling against the overwhelming gloom, while the distant wail of sirens echoed through the quiet night, a haunting reminder of the city's ceaseless unrest. Sergeant Ethan Cole tightened his police jacket against the chill as he advanced cautiously along the alley. His sharp eyes scanned the darkness for any sign of movement. Beside him, Shadow, his fiercely loyal German shepherd and trusted partner, moved with silent precision. Every muscle in the dog was tense, every ear alert, as if he too sensed that tonight was different. This was not merely another operation. It was a high-risk raid on an armed criminal gang that had long terrorized the district. Though Ethan had faced danger before, an unshakable feeling of foreboding now gripped him, hinting that something was terribly amiss. Memories of past operations flooded Ethan's mind, missions where he and Shadow had navigated the darkest corners of criminal underworlds, rescuing innocents and apprehending dangerous foes. In those moments, the bond between handler and dog had been unbreakable. Shadow was more than a working partner. He was family, a silent guardian whose instincts had saved them on countless occasions. Tonight, as the two moved deeper into the heart of the alley, the quiet was unnerving. Every shadow seemed to conceal potential threats, and every distant sound carried the promise of violence. The very air was charged with tension, and the duo pressed forward, driven by duty and an unspoken trust in each other. Without warning, the silence was shattered by a deafening gunshot. In an instant, chaos erupted. A searing pain blazed across Ethan's chest, and he felt the burning sting of a bullet as it tore through his flesh. His vision blurred and the world spun violently around him. In that critical moment, his body betrayed him. He staggered, his strength waning with each heartbeat. Before he could comprehend the sudden onslaught, Ethan collapsed onto the cold, unforgiving pavement. Warm blood seeped rapidly through the fabric of his uniform, a stark testament to the brutal force of the attack. Instinctively, Shadow sprang into action. With a furious bark that shattered the remaining quiet, he positioned himself over Ethan, as if to shield his fallen handler from further harm. Shadow's growls were low and menacing, his eyes flashing with a mix of determination and raw instinct. Even as Ethan's consciousness faded, Shadow remained by his side, his presence a steadfast promise of protection. The ambush had come without mercy, and in the midst of chaos, it was clear that Ethan's life now hung in the balance. Ethan's body lay broken on the pavement, his labored breathing punctuating the cold silence of the night. His fingers, still clutching his side, trembled as he fought against the darkness closing in. Each shallow breath was a battle, a desperate attempt to hold on to life. In the background, muffled voices emerged as shadowy figures advanced, their intentions unclear but undeniably hostile. For Ethan, every second that passed was a reminder of the fragility of existence. In that moment, the bond between man and dog was put to the ultimate test. As the attackers began to close in, their figures emerging from the darkness, Ethan's weakened mind flashed back to previous raids. Each memory carried the weight of sacrifice and the harsh lessons of street justice. He recalled the countless times when his resolve had been tested, when the line between life and death blurred under the relentless pressure of criminal chaos. But tonight, the stakes were higher, and his pulse pounded with a mix of fear and determination. Amid the advancing silhouettes and the cold, indifferent gaze of his attackers, Ethan's only hope rested on the steadfast loyalty of Shadow. The dog's eyes, burning with a fierce intensity, conveyed a silent promise to protect, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As Ethan lay on the rough pavement, the biting cold seeping into his bones, a swirl of thoughts mingled with pain. He questioned his fate and silently recounted the oath he had taken to serve and protect. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum in the stillness, a reminder that time was slipping away. His mind drifted to moments of triumph on the streets, to the laughter shared with colleagues in quieter times, and to the unspoken bond he shared with Shadow, a bond forged in the crucible of danger and trust. Now, as the world around him blurred into shadows and uncertain shapes, he clung desperately to the memory of better days and the hope that the dawn would bring rescue. In the midst of this turmoil, the sounds of approaching footsteps grew louder, each one resonating with the promise of further peril. Shadow, ever the vigilant guardian, shifted his weight, his eyes scanning every dark corner as he prepared for the next inevitable confrontation. The murmurs of the assailants, their crude taunts and dismissive remarks, filtered through the air, heightening the sense of impending doom. Despite the chaos, there was a solemn beauty in the raw display of loyalty and courage that played out on the cold pavement. Ethan, though battered and on the brink of losing consciousness, managed a faint, almost imperceptible nod towards Shadow, a silent communication of trust that transcended words. As the tension in the alley reached its zenith, the night itself seemed to hold its breath, suspended between hope and despair. In those fleeting moments, every sound and every heartbeat took on monumental significance. The looming threat of the gang, the echo of past victories, and the unyielding bond between man and beast converged into a single electrifying instant. Though the future remained uncertain and the danger far from over, one truth shone through with unwavering clarity: the loyalty of a guardian can be the difference between life and death. And for Ethan, that guardian was Shadow. In that moment, destiny was rewritten. As darkness maintained its relentless grip over the deserted alley, Shadow's heart pounded with urgency. After leaving Sergeant Ethan Cole's motionless form behind, the loyal K-9 raced through twisting corridors and narrow backstreets, his powerful legs propelling him forward with unwavering determination. Every muscle burned as he sprinted under the cold glare of flickering streetlights, driven by an instinct that defied fear. His mission was clear: find help before Ethan's life slipped away. Moments later, Officer Jake Reynolds emerged from his parked patrol car near the intersection. The radio's idle chatter was abruptly cut by the sight of a blur, a dash of dark fur and determined eyes streaking past. "Shadow!" Jake shouted, instantly recognizing the urgency in the dog's desperate run. Without a moment's hesitation, he leapt from the vehicle, gripping his radio tightly, and began to pursue his steadfast partner. Shadow's pace was unyielding, each bound echoing off brick walls and deserted sidewalks. As Jake followed, his thoughts raced with memories of past missions, of the unbreakable bond between Ethan and Shadow, forged through countless dangers and shared sacrifices. The city's nightscape blurred into a mosaic of shadows and light, every step charged with hope and anxiety. Before long, Shadow's keen nose led him to a familiar scent amid the chaos. Near the entrance of a dimly lit alley, a figure lay on the cold pavement. Jake's heart sank as he recognized the fallen form of Sergeant Ethan Cole. Blood stained Ethan's uniform, and his breathing was shallow and labored. The sight struck Jake with painful clarity: the ambush had been ruthless and time was running out. Dropping to his knees beside Ethan, Jake's hands trembled as he checked his partner's wounds. Officer down," he barked into the radio, his voice echoing off the silent walls. "Medics needed immediately at West 14th Street Alley, next to the abandoned building." He pressed pressure onto the bleeding injuries as each second stretched into an eternity. Amid the haze of pain, Ethan's eyes fluttered open and found Shadow standing vigil at his side. As sirens began to wail in the distance, the air filled with a mix of hope and dread. Paramedics rushed onto the scene, moving swiftly with practiced precision, while Shadow remained at Ethan's side, his eyes burning with determination. A medic murmured, "That dog won't leave him," as the urgency of the rescue enveloped the night. The ambulance screeched to a halt under the indifferent night sky, and medics carefully lifted Ethan onto a stretcher. Shadow leaped upward, attempting to follow as Ethan was carried away, but Jake gently intercepted him. "Easy boy," Jake whispered. "He'll be all right. We're in this together." Shadow's eyes, filled with concern, never left Ethan, his loyalty as unwavering as ever. The ride to the hospital was a blur of harsh lights and jarring bumps, each moment marked by the steady beep of monitors. Inside the ambulance, Ethan's condition hung by a thread, a stark reminder of the ambush's brutality. Yet, Shadow's presence remained a beacon of hope in that confined space, a silent guardian against despair. Upon reaching the hospital, heavy steel doors closed between Ethan and Shadow, creating an agonizing separation. Inside, doctors and nurses moved swiftly amidst controlled chaos, working to stabilize Ethan's critical condition. Outside, Shadow pressed his nose against the cold glass, straining to sense any sign of his partner. Hours passed with excruciating slowness as Shadow maintained a tireless vigil by the emergency room door. Every time the door opened, a spark of hope lit within him, only to fade when it closed again. A kind nurse offered a small bowl of food, but Shadow's focus remained solely on Ethan's struggle for life. Officer Reynolds visited often, finding Shadow seated quietly as a steadfast sentinel in the dim light. In rare moments when the hospital doors creaked open, a brief glimpse of movement stirred hope in Shadow's eyes. Yet each closing door deepened the silence and shadowed his heart with sorrow. Inside the hospital, Ethan fought through surgery and the early stages of recovery. His body, weakened by blood loss and pain, waged a silent battle against the odds. Though surrounded by the hum of machines and urgent voices, his thoughts were with Shadow. As night yielded to the early light of dawn, fragile stability set in. In a modest recovery room, Ethan awoke to find a familiar silhouette at the foot of his bed. Shadow had somehow made his way inside, his eyes soft yet ever vigilant. Their eyes met in a silent exchange that spoke of shared trials and unwavering loyalty. Ethan's hoarse voice broke the silence as he whispered, "You're here, boy, you never left." Shadow responded with a gentle whimper, pressing his head against Ethan's hand in a silent promise of devotion. In that intimate moment, the horrors of the ambush faded, replaced by the strength of their bond. As the first rays of dawn filtered through the hospital windows, a quiet resolve filled both Ethan and Shadow. Ethan, still fragile from his ordeal, mustered the strength to smile at Shadow, acknowledging the unspoken gratitude for the dog's relentless loyalty. In that moment, the weight of the night's terror gave way to a hopeful determination for recovery and a future free of fear. Outside, the world was beginning to stir with life. The soft hum of early morning traffic and the chirp of birds signaled a new day's promise. In the quiet of the recovery room, Ethan's eyes shone with determination as he resolved to rebuild not only his strength but also the bonds that had seen him through his darkest hour. Officer Reynolds, watching from a distance, felt a sense of pride, knowing that while the night had brought tragedy, it had also reaffirmed the unyielding spirit of brotherhood between man and his most faithful companion. Together, Ethan and Shadow embodied the hope that even in the aftermath of violence, the human and canine spirit could rise again, stronger and more resilient than before. The promise of a new day filled the room with gentle light, and in that light, every scar, every painful memory, transformed into a testament of survival and love. Inside the sterile confines of the hospital recovery room, the soft hum of machinery served as a constant reminder that life was fragile, yet every heartbeat was a small victory against the lingering darkness. Sergeant Ethan Cole slowly emerged from a haze of pain and half-sleep, his eyes fluttering open to a world blurred by injury and uncertainty. The room, painted in muted tones of recovery, was bathed in the gentle glow of early morning light that seeped through a high window, creating dancing patterns on the cool, white walls. In that delicate interplay of light and shadow, Ethan discovered a renewed determination, a promise to himself that he would overcome the night's horrors. At the foot of his bed, Shadow, the ever-watchful German shepherd, sat in silent vigil. The loyal companion had not wavered throughout the ordeal, his dark eyes filled with concern and steadfast devotion. Every slight movement, every soft whimper from Shadow reminded Ethan that he was not alone in his struggle. Amid the pounding in his chest and the residual sting of pain, the sound of Shadow's steady breathing became a soothing lullaby, a rhythmic assurance that hope was still alive. Time seemed to slow as hours passed in that recovery room. Nurses and doctors moved quietly along the corridor, their faces etched with the calm intensity of those who had witnessed life and death on countless occasions. In this fragile space between despair and healing, every beep of a monitor and every murmur in the hall carried immense significance. With each measured pulse and labored breath, Ethan's body fought to reclaim its lost strength, each moment a battle against the darkness that had once threatened to engulf him. As the first rays of dawn grew bolder, Ethan found himself lost in reflection. Memories of that fateful night, of the sudden brutal ambush, the searing pain of the bullet and Shadow's desperate protective growl, washed over him in vivid fragments. He recalled how the cold, ruthless pavement had greeted him after he collapsed, and how the loyal dog had raced into the night to fetch help. Those memories, though laced with pain, were also steeped in a fierce love and loyalty that transcended the immediate terror of violence. In that quiet hour, Ethan understood that the scars on his body were not marks of defeat but symbols of survival and the unwavering bond between a man and his best friend. Slowly, strength began to return. The once crushing pain in his chest transformed into a dull ache, a constant reminder of the night's trauma, yet also proof that he was still fighting. Each breath, though labored, became a triumph. Shadow, ever by his side, would gently nudge Ethan's hand with his muzzle, as if urging him to hold on just a little longer. In the silence that followed each small gesture, a mutual understanding blossomed between them. This was not the end, but the beginning of a long, hard journey back to wholeness. Outside the recovery room, the world moved with urgent determination. Officer Jake Reynolds made regular visits, his presence a quiet beacon of reassurance. "You're a fighter, Ethan," Jake would say softly while placing a steady hand on his shoulder. His words, filled with both concern and respect, reinforced the unbreakable bond of brotherhood that extended beyond the uniform. Each visit, each shared moment of silence, reminded Ethan that he was surrounded by those who believed in him and who would help carry him through the arduous days ahead. In the midst of recovery, the hospital itself took on a life of its own, a place where every sound and every movement whispered the promise of renewal. The rhythmic beeping of machines, the soft murmur of conversations in the hall, and even the distant hum of the city outside blended into a symphony of survival. Every element in that space seemed to conspire to remind Ethan that even after the deepest darkness, light could be found. It was as if the very walls of the hospital were bearing witness to his battle, offering silent support with every passing moment. Ethan's mind often wandered back to the violent chaos of the ambush, but now he saw it with a clarity born of survival rather than despair. The memory was both haunting and instructive, a lesson in the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every heartbeat. He recalled the determined set of Shadow's jaw, the urgency in the dog's eyes as he raced through perilous streets to secure help. That night had taught him that true strength was measured not only by physical endurance but by the ability to trust in the love and loyalty of those who fought by your side. In the days that followed, Ethan enrolled in a rigorous rehabilitation program designed to mend not only his battered body but also his weary spirit. Every session was a confrontation with his limitations, every small step a reclamation of the vitality that had once seemed irretrievably lost. Shadow, never far from his master's side, accompanied him through each painstaking exercise and every moment of quiet recovery. Their bond deepened further with every shared struggle, each milestone celebrated as a victory over the remnants of that violent night. Throughout the hospital, whispers of Ethan's resilience began to spread. Doctors marveled at his progress, nurses spoke in hushed tones of the extraordinary bond between the sergeant and his canine guardian, and even the hospital's administrative staff took note of the quiet heroism unfolding within those walls. The story of Sergeant Ethan Cole and Shadow grew into a symbol of hope, a vivid reminder that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the human spirit, supported by unconditional loyalty, could emerge triumphant. Yet, amidst these small celebrations of recovery, Ethan remained acutely aware of the cost that had been paid. The echo of gunfire, the bitter taste of blood, and the lingering shadows of that brutal ambush were never far from his thoughts. But rather than allow these memories to anchor him in despair, he chose to transform them into a fierce resolve to protect others. Each day, as he took another tentative step toward full recovery, Ethan vowed silently to honor the sacrifice and loyalty that had saved his life. As dusk slowly settled on a cool autumn evening, the recovery room grew quiet once more. Ethan sat by a window, watching as the sky shifted from vibrant sunset hues to the gentle blues of approaching night. Shadow lay close by, his head resting on Ethan's lap in a gesture of profound trust. In that peaceful moment, words were unnecessary. The bond they shared had become a language all its own, a testament to perseverance, loyalty, and the transformative power of hope. In that soft, reflective twilight, Ethan made a promise, to himself, to his fallen comrades, and to every life he had sworn to protect. No matter how long the night, no matter how deep the wounds, he would rise again. The promise was simple yet resolute, that the light of hope would outshine the darkness, and that the bond between him and Shadow would remain an eternal guardian against despair. With those thoughts steadying his heart, Ethan allowed himself a small, determined smile. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he knew now that even in the bleakest moments, the strength of loyalty and love would guide him back to the light. The morning after Ethan's release from the hospital marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. With every step he took on the familiar pavement of the precinct, he felt both the weight of his past and the promise of redemption. His body still bore the scars of that harrowing night, and his heart throbbed with memories of pain and loss. Yet, beneath the surface of his wounded spirit burned an unyielding determination to rise above the darkness. Accompanied by Shadow, his ever-faithful companion, Ethan embraced this second chance with quiet resolve and hope with unwavering commitment today. Returning to the precinct, Ethan was greeted by familiar faces and silent nods of respect from his fellow officers. Each step through the bustling halls stirred memories of past triumphs and tragedies, reminding him that every scar had a story. Conversations filled with concern and admiration echoed in the corridors as he passed, while the weight of his ordeal lent a new gravity to his presence. In quiet moments, Ethan's eyes would wander to the framed photos of heroic moments, fueling his determination to honor the legacy of those who had stood by him in the darkest times with pride. Inside the quiet sanctuary of his modest apartment, Ethan wrestled with memories that haunted his every thought. Flashbacks of gunfire, searing pain, and the relentless rush of adrenaline intermingled with softer recollections of camaraderie and hope. Nights were especially long, as he lay awake listening to the steady breathing of Shadow by his side. The silence of darkness amplified his internal struggle, yet each recollection became a lesson in resilience. Amid the turmoil, Ethan resolved to transform his pain into strength, embracing the lessons learned from his past to forge a brighter, more determined future and reclaim his inner peace. Shadow, ever the silent guardian, sensed Ethan's inner turmoil and provided comfort in his own steadfast way. The dog's unwavering presence, a constant reminder of loyalty and courage, filled the quiet hours with a palpable warmth. Every gentle nudge, every soft whimper, resonated deeply with Ethan's battered soul. In moments of doubt, when shadows of fear crept into his mind, Shadow's calm gaze and attentive posture restored a fragile sense of hope. Together, man and dog forged an unspoken pact to stand against the darkness, their hearts beating in synchronized rhythm towards a future of healing with unyielding, shared determination. Ethan's journey of physical rehabilitation was as arduous as it was transformative. Each day brought new challenges, yet every small victory built a bridge from despair to resilience. With gritted teeth and unwavering focus, he pushed through grueling exercises and painstaking physical therapy sessions. Every drop of sweat and every moment of pain served as a reminder of his commitment to reclaim the life he nearly lost. In the supportive environment of the precinct's training facilities, Ethan rediscovered his strength, drawing inspiration from the dedication of his colleagues and the silent encouragement of Shadow, who remained ever at his side. News of Ethan's miraculous recovery spread rapidly throughout the department and the community. Officers recounted the heroism that had saved his life, and stories of Shadow's loyalty resonated deeply with everyone. A renewed sense of pride filled the precinct as colleagues celebrated the return of a brave and resilient officer. Ethan's journey became a symbol of hope and perseverance, inspiring those who faced their own battles. In moments of quiet reflection, he would remember the fear and pain of that fateful night, but also the immense strength that had carried him through. His courage shone as a beacon for others. In a quiet meeting after duty, Officer Jake Reynolds sat down with Ethan to discuss the incident and the road ahead. Their conversation was filled with both somber reflection and cautious optimism. Jake recounted the moment when Shadow had leapt into action, a memory that still sent shivers down his spine. They spoke of the risks inherent in their line of work and the unpredictable nature of life on the streets. Yet, amid the uncertainty, both men found strength in their shared experiences and in the unbreakable bond forged through adversity. Their determination, mutual respect, and camaraderie illuminated the way. With each passing day, Ethan's resolve grew stronger as he returned to active duty. The trauma of that fateful night gradually transformed into a wellspring of determination to serve and protect with renewed vigor. Training sessions became a celebration of his regained strength, and every patrol was a reaffirmation of his commitment to justice. The lessons of vulnerability and courage intertwined, guiding him to make more empathetic decisions on the streets. In every smile shared with a civilian and every nod of respect from a colleague, Ethan discovered that adversity could forge a path toward a nobler purpose beyond measure. Looking forward, the future shimmered with both promise and uncertainty. The scars of battle, both seen and unseen, served as a constant reminder of the sacrifices made in the line of duty. Yet, amid the lingering shadows, rays of hope broke through the darkness, illuminating the path to redemption. Ethan embraced this duality, understanding that life's struggles were not burdens, but stepping stones to growth. Every challenge overcome, every setback endured, forged an unbreakable spirit within him. With Shadow faithfully at his side, the journey toward healing and justice continued unabated, driven by courage and an unrelenting will to persevere. In the final moments of reflection, as dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Ethan stood outside the precinct with Shadow by his side. The silence of the evening spoke volumes of battles fought and victories won. Every heartbeat echoed the resilience of a man who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. With gratitude for the second chance at life and an enduring faith in the power of loyalty, Ethan vowed to protect the innocent and honor the memory of those lost. Together, they stepped into the twilight, ready to embrace the promise of a new dawn.